Parks Planning Commission meeting, Thursday, August 4th, 2016. Roll call. Here.
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 Public comment. This item is either for public comment on any action item or for general public comment and is limited to no more than 3 minutes for each commentator. Would anyone like to come forward? There being none. Approval of the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Approval of the minutes, or two sets of minutes of July 7th, 2016.
Move to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Minutes of July 14th, 2016.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Oh,
Aye.
I'm an
Opposed?
abstention. I
There's an
abstained.
abstention.
I wasn't here, July 14th.
Announcements and committee reports.
Chairman Camerata and members of the Planning Commission, the vacancy on the Planning Commission that will result as Mr. Volz leaves us will be announced at the City Council meeting of the 8th of August and the 22nd of August, and so we would hope that there's going to be an appointment sometime in September. So we would look forward to honoring Mr. Volz for his service at a future date. Also, at this juncture, it appears that rather than meet on September 15th, and we will confirm one way or another here very shortly, but rather than meet on the 1st of September, which is the Thursday preceding the Labor Day weekend, staff is looking to propose to you that we meet on September 15th, which would be the third Thursday of September. Okay.
Any other announcements?
No.
Thank you. And informational items?
None, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Start our public hearing. PCN 16035, consideration of and possible action on a conditional use permit request to allow for a brewery and tap room on a site 1.55 acres in size in the industrial zoning district located at 380 South Rock Boulevard, Sparks, Nevada. Senior Planner Ian Crittenden presenting.
Members of the council, members of the commission, thank you. Ian Crittenden, Senior Planner. Sorry, we're trying to get the presentation to work, and it's being obstinate. You want to wait, or you want me to? Yeah, we could do that route.
Very nice. Oh, I think it's quite nice. Really nice.
Oh, it was. They just switched it. Oh. Yeah, I had the camera pointed the wrong direction.
I know.
Okay. So, this is an application to a conditional use permit application for the use of a brewery in the industrial zone. This site is, as you can see here on the site plan or the vicinity map. Here's Rock Boulevard, and Heimer. It's on the corner of Rock Boulevard and Heimer. It's the old Trinkets Treasures trash building. You guys might know it that way. As I said, the site is zoned industrial. Breweries are essentially a manufacturing use, but because they often incorporate a commercial aspect, like from in the way of a tap room and stuff like that, they're seen as needing a little more review, and that's why the conditional use is required. I do actually have another sheet I wanted to show, but we can wait 1 second on that. So this use is going to, in reviewing this project, we looked at what special considerations need to be looked at for a brewery, and essentially those that pertain to planning and zoning are the parking and essentially landscaping inside the building, or outside the building, landscaping outside the building. For a brewery, we do not have a canned parking for breweries. And so what we did is we broke down that building, had the applicant break down that building by its specific uses. And there's a table here, but I'll kind of go through it for those who don't have it. Essentially, we have approximately 4,500 square feet of production, where they'll actually be doing the brewing, 2,100, a little over 2,100, 21,000 square feet of warehousing, 1,625 square feet of office, and 3,200 square feet of a tap room, and then 1,200 square feet of a patio. And so we use those uses to break those down and associate the parking demand on each of those different pieces, which came out to a total of 30.79 required, and they're providing 34. So they met the parking standard, which is sometimes a struggle in the industrial, but they were able to meet that standard. The other standard that we look at a lot of times with these new uses is landscaping. The landscaping in industrial, I actually handed out a piece, a little part of the code. That talks about what the landscaping requirements are in industrial. Industrial, unlike most of our other zoning districts, does not have a percent of the property that needs to be landscaped. In the case of this building, would be really difficult since the building takes up a majority of that property. So I'll go through, kind of step through the, oh geez, see if we can zoom this in so you can see it here. So as you can see here, it's got all the landscaping percentages for the properties. And you get down to industrial, and it just says follow the standards. So basically, there's not a percent of landscaping that they have to install. There's just other standards that have to be met. And those, for the most part, boil down to section D here that's highlighted. Basically, landscaping strips a minimum of 10 feet in length along street frontages. They have essentially 2 street frontages on this property. They have Heimer here, and then Rock. Not really Rock because of the grade separation. They kind of have a road here. I don't know if that road has a name. It's just an easement. So essentially that would be kind of another frontage, but because of the easement and the location of the building, there's not really an opportunity for any additional landscaping there, obviously. So along Heimer is where their landscaping is required. They have it existing based on, it's not dimensioned on the map, but the map is to scale, and I scale it off, and it's about 12 feet wide, and there's a minimum required 10 feet, so they met that standard. The one place where it's short is it's supposed to have 30 trees per, or 1 tree for every 30 feet of linear frontage. And they have about, oh, I've forgotten what that number was, in the neighborhood of 570 linear feet of frontage. Which basically boiled down to them needing 7 trees. And right now they have 6. We've talked with the property owner about a portion in this area that is in front of parking that will be striped. We talked to them about enlarging that area, and that would be a place for 1 more tree, and then landscaping would be met for the code. So those are kind of the 2 concerns, both parking and landscaping, that we had some desire to make sure we reviewed in detail, and they were able to meet both of those standards. So the trying to go through here and make sure I've covered all the bullet points I wanted to here. Okay, so we've added 3 conditions to this conditional use permit. They're fairly basic. One regarding to this is approved as submitted or designed. Substantial changes will have to come back through Planning Commission. There's expiration date tied to conditional use permits. And the third one is regarding the landscaping. The drawing that we have doesn't fully delineate all of the landscaping we've discussed and come to understanding with the applicant about. And so our last condition just was that landscaping would be addressed and that it'll have to be approved by the administrator before building permits will be issued. So that concludes my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'm available. I know the applicant's here as well.
Any questions for Mr. Quitten? You want to announce your name, please? Thank you.
I'm looking through here where you're referencing a traffic letter was provided. The trip generation does not trigger the need for a full traffic study.
Correct.
What did the traffic letter state?
The traffic letter had a lot of specific details about the trip generation and those kind of things. But basically, the number of trips that are required in order to require that full traffic study, it wasn't met. I have that letter here. I can tell you what they are generating or what it's considered to be generating. So forth.
Question is the 3,200 square foot tap room and the 1,200 square foot patio, so it's going to be open to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So 34 parking spaces is going to be sufficient.
Yes.
Okay.
Where's our letter?
Ms. Smith, when Mr. Crittenden reads the letter into the record, would you please take a copy of it to include it as part of the record for this evening's presentation?
Would you like me to read the entirety of the letter?
No, what my concern is that we have a tap room and a patio, so we're gonna be open to the public, and we have 34 parking spaces. I'm just thinking about, I realize other businesses are probably gonna be closed when they're open, so I would hope that they have a reciprocal agreement that any overflow parking can be used by surrounding neighbors.
Okay. I'll tell you what the letter basically gives us as the trips in and out for those uses. So basically, they broke it down from the engineering perspective into 2 uses. They have drinking place and the square footage associated with that, and then manufacturing and the square footage associated with that. They've got PM peak hours. They don't have AM peak hours at all for the tap room.
Right.
The PM is 24 and out is 12, and the total is 36.
Okay.
And then manufacturing obviously is a lot low, 7 and 13, and that total is 56 total. It says it basically says 104 trips total, 20 trips. The AM peak was 20 with 56 total PM trips. These totals are below the threshold that trigger the need for a full traffic study. That's a letter from Paul Seliggy, and I'll get a copy to
Okay.
Mayor Lee for the record.
Okay.
So,
Ian, as a follow-up to Mr. Vanderbilt's question, you mentioned peak hours. How many hours will this establishment be open?
the operating hours, I don't know, but the applicant's here and they could probably tell you
Okay.
what they're planning on.
And so there's a
having for
difference in
operation.
traffic, peak hours versus regular hours, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm not an engineer. I'm not 100% sure how they generate all of that part of the peak hours and so forth. Maybe, maybe.
Chairman Cameron, will you frame your question for me? I'm a little confused as to.
Well, we were talking about traffic study and no need for that, and there was a difference in peak versus regular hours, and
The question I have for the commission is, how geeky do you want me to get? So,
as geeky as you want to
when
get.
we're looking at land use planning, particularly with a small site that could potentially generate a lot of traffic, and may happen. The policy we've had in the city of Sparks in the 17 years I've been here is our first step at evaluating a project's impacts with regard to traffic is to ask the professional, in this case it was Paul Salegi, who's done a lot of work in Sparks, honestly, to generate a trip generation limit. So knowing the square footage of the proposed uses at any site, there is documented chip generation data, typically by the ITE manuals they're called. So the first step is in this case, Mr. Salegi will take those square footages that are proposed, generate the typical traffic from documented studies, and then what we look for is if we see about 80 peak hour trips generated, that then gives the city engineer the ability to request what we would call a full traffic study. So I know this commission hasn't looked at a ton of them, but in a full traffic study, then what we're asking for is, given the load that we think this land use is going to use, what are the effects on the intersections, the driveways, anywhere where we could create conflicts or congestion, and then the traffic engineer has to go to the RTC, if we're on regional roads, and in this case we are with Rock Boulevard, get the regional road traffic volumes predicted for today, 10 years from now, or whichever time frame we request. And then through the analysis of that model, and we can look at intersection capacity analysis, it gets fairly complicated. So in the case that Mr. Crittenden was discussing with you tonight, we don't meet those peak hour trips. And we focus on peak hour because a lot of the modeling is done on peak hour. If you guys can imagine, we're all traffic engineers in some way because we drive cars. During off-peak times, there's usually capacity on most of our streets. The driveways aren't plugged up. It is that peak when we're all either commuting or traveling from our homes to go to an establishment that we focus on. So that is the rationale in a nutshell behind why this analysis stops at the trip generation letter and did not trigger a further study or a more advanced study.
Any further questions for staff?
I have one. You mentioned that these conditional permits have an expiration date. How long is that for?
I believe it's 2 years, but now you're asking me, I'll have to look.
It is 2 years.
2 years.
1 year.
2 years from the date of approval, they have to make substantial progress, and as soon as
Or
they
they come
essentially
back.
submit for building permits is usually kind of our gauge of that.
Does this include the landscape approval also has to be in there?
Yeah, that's essentially what the next or the last condition, the third condition about landscaping says is, we're not gonna approve building permits until we have a landscaping plan that we feel is adequate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Would the applicant like to come forward? Thank you, Ian. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Just wanted to take a few seconds of your time just to introduce myself. My name is Jeremy Warren. 6 years ago, I started Knee Deep Brewing Company, believe it or not, in Sparks, Nevada. That was its company's first business license. If you look it up, it's pretty interesting. So over the last 6 years, I helped develop those brands in that company into an international and nationally distributed company. That company is going to far-reaching 20,000 barrels of production this year, and they'll most likely be a 50 to 60,000 barrel a year brewery here in the next couple of years. I decided to part ways in July of 2015 to kind of branch away and continue what I originally sought out to do. We were originally, we're going to build this facility in West Sacramento, but the industrial market in that community is very, very tough right now. And we needed to open a brewery, so we came up here to where it all began. And just meeting with Frank Lepre and Greg Shutt at Collier's, we were able to come together very quickly, and it's very quite impressive on how business works up here, which is really nice. So our goal here is to build one of the largest brewing facilities in the state of Nevada in the long run, in regards to production. What our goal is not only do we want to make some really great beer for the state of Nevada, but we've already secured distribution contracts for 11 states. We could be one of a very highly sought after, nationally recognized craft beer brand here in the state of Nevada. We also have an additional 8+ states of distributors that want to sign us currently, but we just don't have the capital to put that much infrastructure in today and to go there. Our goal is to be part of the community here as well as help grow and strengthen the city of Sparks as well. So if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chairman. What was your first name?
Jeremy.
Jeremy? I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm not really quite sure if you can answer it. I mean, you've been in the brewery a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Is it good beer?
It's very good beer. I could have brought a big presentation. I didn't
No, I don't think
but,
this guy's sitting down here.
yeah, we have I have pages of awards, GABF medals, U.S. Beer Open Championships. There's a beer competition in California. It's at the Bistro in Hayward, and it's like the Super Bowl of IPA and double IPA festival. I mean, people are shipping kegs through FedEx to compete here, and that was the competition I won one year. And I've won it every single year, either first, second, or third in the multiple categories. And that's what kind of helped expedite and build the reputation of Knee Deep Brewing. A lot of the beers on a scale of 1 to 100 being rated by like Beer Pulse, Rate Beer, are all in the 90s and above. For a while there, for about 2-3 years, I actually had a beer in the top 250 beers of the world. But it is very good beer.
So it will be called Revision Beer?
It's Revision Brewing Company,
Okay.
correct. Yep.
Thank you, Jeremy. Any further questions for the applicant?
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Open up to public comment. This is for general public comment, limited to items, limited to this item, which is item PCN 16035. Would anyone like to come forward and speak? We'll close the public hearing, bring it back to the commissioners for comment. Yes, thank you.
I move to approve conditional use permit SP 160007 associated with PCN 16035, adopting findings C1 through C6, and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 3 as listed in the staff report.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Good luck.
Good luck, guys.
Remy? The next item on the agenda is PCN 16026, consideration of and possible action on a conditional use permit request to allow for the construction of a new 75-foot tall flagpole cell tower within 750 feet of existing cell towers and a 40-foot front setback reduction on a site .89 acres in size in the PD Plan Development, Kylie Ranch South zoning district, located at 5215 Vista Boulevard, Sparks, Nevada. Ms. Karen Melby is presenting.
Good evening, I'm Karen Melby, Development Service Manager. Before you is a request to construct a 75-foot tall concealment flagpole cell tower. The reason this is a special use, or conditional use, permit tonight is because they don't meet the spacing distance between cell towers and they don't meet the setback. American Towers LLC operates 2 concealment flagpole wireless communication towers at 5215 Vista Boulevard. On the whatever this thing's called, I'm sorry. You can see the property that they're locating on is outlined in blue. The existing towers are located in this area, and they would like to put the third one in this area. In August of 2015, the City Council adopted a new zoning code, and that included a section on the wireless telecommunication and towers and antennas. The purpose of this chapter was to establish guidelines for the review and siting of wireless communication towers and antennas. The new cell towers are subject to an administrative review within 60 days of receipt of the application. If the new tower cannot comply with the standards as outlined in Title 20, it then must come before you in a conditional use permit. This request is for siting of the tower that does not comply with our separation distances and also our setbacks. Separation distance between cell towers of 75 feet or less is 750 feet, and then also the setback is 75% of that height of the tower. So at a 75-foot tower, they need a 56-foot setback. The proposed location has been selected to improve the existing network coverage. The cell tower will address the capacity issues within the T-Mobile network while improving data and voice coverage in the surrounding area. They are requesting the proposed setback for the cell tower is 17 feet, and as I mentioned, the ordinance requires that they be at 56 feet. The three towers will parallel Los Altos with an equal spacing of 29.5 feet between each of the three towers. As I mentioned, this tower will be a T-Mobile, and the new equipment will be located to the west of the proposed cell tower. The applicant is proposing a 75-foot concealment flagpole. In other words, this will be a cell tower that looks like a thick pole. The equipment will be concealed within that pole and then also underground going to the containment area for the ground equipment. The flagpole will be constructed the same height with the same materials and colors of the existing flagpoles. The equipment and structure will match the existing center. They are proposing a 6-foot stucco wall with a wrought iron fence on top of it, which matches the existing containment area for the other two towers. The proposed site will be unmanned and visited by a technician approximately once a month to check the facility and performance of necessary maintenance. Before selecting this proposed site, the applicant assessed the surrounding area. The primary objective was to see if there was an existing cell tower location that would meet their requirements. For the radio frequency objectives to be met, the tower needed to be at 71 feet and be able to meet the azimuths that do not create interference with the existing equipment. The applicant searched for a radius of 1.5 miles to determine available locations. Within their search, they came up with 3 locations within actually a 2-mile radius. However, 2 of the locatable facilities within that radius were rooftop locations, which are above the 71 feet that they needed. The other location was a monopole, which is currently basically maxed out with co-location on it, so they could not add their facilities to this. So they found that this site was the most feasible location to put this third tower. The request for a conditional use permit is not in reviewing the findings, the first finding relating to land use or the master plan. The request for the conditional use permit is not related to a land use of general commercial, but rather is a result of not meeting our minimum separations within our zoning code and the setbacks within our zoning code. The proposed cell tower will appear as a flagpole, and we'll be adding a third flagpole cell tower within this location. The proposed project meets the required action strategies within the City of Sparks master plan. In regards to existing surrounding land uses, the adding of the structure will work like a flagpole and will not affect the existing land uses, which is a shopping center. They will be located within an existing shopping center. The existing cell towers and proposed towers are to be located in the shopping center that was built in 1999. The existing cell towers, the other 2 existing towers were built in 2010. The conditional use permit is to allow this new tower not in compliance with our separation and setbacks. the potential impacts of the natural resources and the total population, which was available for natural resources, will support without unreasonable impairment, has been previously considered when the site was developed as a shopping center. There are 8 findings relating to the cell towers. The first finding is relating to the height of the proposed tower. The proposed height of this concealment tower is 75 feet, which is the same height of the existing 2 cell towers, and the existing are both concealment flagpoles. The proximity to the tower to residential, the proposed tower is to be located within a shopping center. The shopping center is surrounded by residential land use. In measuring off of an aerial photograph, I measured the distance to the closest residence to be 226 feet. By ordinance, they have to be at 225 feet, so they exceed that 226 feet. The required setback of 75% of the height makes it a required setback of 56 feet. The proposed tower exceeds the north, east, and west property lines. It's just the south property line that they do not meet, and they are proposing to be at 17 feet from the street. The proposed tower will be located in an existing shopping center, which is surrounded by residential, as I mentioned, but this is also located at a very busy intersection of Los Altos and Parkway and Vista Boulevard. The surrounding topography is relatively flat, however, it does rise to the east as you go up Los Altos into the Vistas project. The existing cell tower is located within the shopping center, which already has existing mature landscaping. They will be, if they have to remove any landscaping, we'll be replacing any landscaping, but the existing landscaping will remain. The stealth design of the concealment flagpole will hide the equipment and wiring, and it will appear like a third flagpole. Access to the site will be through the shopping center, and the applicant has conducted an analysis for the selection of the site, which I discussed previously. Staff is recommending approval with 8 conditions. I'd be happy to answer any question, and the applicant is here to also answer questions.
Any questions from Ms. Milky?
Real quick, please, when you said you measured from an aerial photograph the distance to the nearest neighbor, was that, where was that, to the east, to the north,
It would be to the south.
to the south?
It was,
That's what I was trying to figure out.
it was the houses down here.
Be the bail in the ground.
Yeah.
Those
Oh, I'm sorry. They got cut off.
Okay, I got you, okay.
But it's the houses down here. That was the closest, because these houses over here were over 300 or 400 feet.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And related, we only got one foot cushion.
226 versus 225.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To one of the homes. All the other homes are over greater distance, and I actually asked Scott to, and I think he's prepared to address that.
Yeah, we are having an actual professional survey completed on this project, just to make sure we're measuring it out at 226.75
1
feet.
foot in that distance is a lot of.
Yeah, correct. It does, also, this particular flagpole is set up for a fall zone of 40 feet. So if it were to fail, it would not fail beyond 40 feet of the center of the flagpole.
For the record, would you
Oh, I'm sorry.
state your name?
I
Thanks.
apologize. My name is Scott Alpha. I represent Powder River Development, in this case American Tower and T-Mobile, for their benefit.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions for the applicant?
Yeah, what the, condition number 4, I don't understand this word. Backhaul networks, what does that mean?
It's related to how the signal gets transposed from one location to the next. In this case, there is fiber actively installed, so we would just be connecting to the existing fiber.
What he's saying is that we want to make sure that this is connected to the system and it's not a standalone tower.
Right.
Is that what that?
Yes, that's what that
Thank
means.
you, because
Yeah.
that condition I didn't know.
Apologize. Backhaul is generally represented either by fiber or microwave signal.
Oh, okay.
Any further questions for the applicant? This is a public hearing. Public comment is open. This is for general public comment, limited to item, up to 3 minutes for each. Please come forward.
No, I know flag?
Yes.
Sure.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Subran. I live in the neighborhood of this that's going in. We don't necessarily, and I knocked on a number of neighbors' doors just to see if anybody had a problem with it because it's our property values and our neighborhood, et cetera. They didn't necessarily have a problem, and I don't necessarily have a problem because they are aesthetically pleasing for a cell tower.
Right.
We have a problem with, like what's next? Like if you guys allow this, then where's another cell tower gonna go? And where's another one gonna go? And where's another one gonna go? The one at Reed High, hideous. Like, you guys need to do something about it. So, Molly, I wanna tell you a concern and then just, ask to pay attention to other cell towers that are requesting to come in our area. Just, that they're aesthetically pleasing. This one, does anybody know what the flag is going to be?
Actually, that is open to the council's decision in this case. We're willing to do whatever.
Actually, it is not at all up to this council.
We had this
Not
discussion.
even a smidgen is it up to this body. The First Amendment precludes us from telling you what flag you can fly.
Well, basically what we were intending to do was either a City of Sparks flag or.
You need to go back. Actually, we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
You need to let her finish.
Finish her comment.
Can you finish your comment?
I'm sorry.
Then secondly,
Yeah.
it's, the property owner is the one that's getting the royalties for this tower that's going in. Is that the way I understand how this works? Does any of that go back to the city of Sparks? So like all of us neighbors and all of our homes, we pay our taxes and our property values start to get a blight on them. Not saying that this one is, because the flag actually isn't that bad. Does anything go back into our community? Into our community, into the city of Sparks? I mean, if the homeowner, or if the, property owner is reaping all the benefits, what's in it for the city? Like, I don't have T-Mobile, but anyway, some of those were my concerns. This is kind of nerve-wracking, so I can't think of my other concerns. I guess that's it.
You got a minute 30 to go.
Okay, let me think. I had lots of arguments.
You don't have to use it all up. You just
I
have to-
think one was the flag, one was about money and our properties and our property values, and other cell towers in the Sparks area. The one going up McCarran, I don't know if you guys have taken that down or putting it up, but majorly ugly. The one where they're tearing out the road by that church.
McCarran Pyramid?
Yeah.
Is that in that north of there,
Yes.
Pyramid, you see
Yes.
that one?
Huge and ugly, like, if we're gonna put them in, which we need them, of course, let's try and make them nicer looking. I don't know if that's a negotiation you can do with the cell tower companies or what, but I'm not the only one. I went and knocked on a number of my neighbors' doors, and everybody's kind of of the same mind. I was going to collect signatures, but I didn't think I had to do that yet until I saw what happened here, and then if I have to go collect signatures, I'll go collect signatures. So, anyway, that's my piece.
Speaking of signatures, would you be kind to fill out a card at the end of the dais, with your name and
Yeah, can I do that now?
when you're through?
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bring the applicant back.
Well,
Yeah.
it's asked if there are any more public comments.
Oh, yeah.
We're still open to public comment.
Anybody
Any additional public comment like to come forward? Bring the applicant back. Thank you, Scott.
In relation to the question about the flag.
Flag.
Now I understand that it's not your option. Of course,
Right.
it is something that we're concerned about visually. One of the things that you brought up was the visual impact. And of course, doing a concealment flagpole is probably the least nuisance that we could choose as far as both visual and environmental impact is concerned. In this case, that's why it was selected, to keep uniformity between what's already there and also allow the expansion of cell networks. In relation to property values, this is something that's brought up frequently these days. And unfortunately, there are no specific studies that address property values in relation to cell towers. There is argument that says in their favor that the younger generation, because they're heavy data users, cell phone users, they do want cell towers. And of course, I'm here to represent those folks. In relation to the remainder of her argument, I mean, it is somewhat a biased opinion, and as such, I can't argue that biased opinion.
Any further questions for the applicant?
I would like to address her other questions. She had a question regarding revenue to the community.
Right.
We do require, as one of the conditions you'll see on here, that we require all cell phone, telecommunication businesses to have a business license. So for the operation of this cell tower, they will have to get a business license, and they will have to pay the business license fees. So the city will be receiving revenue through the business licensing. So they have to get a business license. And then I wasn't exactly sure which cell tower you were talking about.
The new one that we had to move, that they tore down where the church and they moved it up north further?
But that's not on Vista, that's
On Queens.
Pyramid.
I think it's from one of those. We're not opposed to it. I'm just asking if
You mean on Vista, on Pyramid? Yeah, that's a cow. The cell tower that's on the church property on Queen, you can see from Pyramid Highway, is what they call a cow, which is a cell tower on wheels. And that's just a temporary, because they had to remove the cell tower that was in the belfry for the Lord of Mercy Church. And so we permitted them under their conditional use permit for that cell tower to put this cow up while they're building the other cell tower. The cell tower is under construction right now, and it's going to be a church belfry. So it'll look like a church belfry. It's a triangular shape that tower that you see right now is just a temporary, so that people still have cell service in that area. It's not a permanent structure.
Are there any further questions for the applicant? Any further questions for Ms. Melby? Let's bring it back to the commissioners for comment, please.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the commission about the status of federal law as it relates to the relative aesthetics of cell phone towers. That is unfortunately not something that this body can base its decision tonight on.
So no Pokemon flag?
No Pokemon flag.
Okay.
That is a federal issue. That's part of federal law, and so you should direct your concerns as it relates to aesthetics and things of that nature to your congressman. Yes.
Well, we do review them, and we do have our standards within the code.
We review them for location. The difficulty is once a variance is granted to one, we have to treat the remainder of the cellular carriers the same way. And so if a variance for a setback on a parcel is granted for one, if there is space for another one, we would be obligated under federal law to treat them the same way.
Well, I think I was just asking if you guys would pay attention to our Spanish Springs area.
It's still a federal issue, unfortunately.
We do map them. We have a map that we keep as a record for where all the cell towers are.
Okay, we are in still questions, any additional questions from the commissioners? Want to bring it to a vote?
Bring it back to the commission.
Bring it back to the commissioners, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to make a motion.
He did.
I thought we did.
Well, I thought we did, but I'll close it for the record. Thank you, Mr. Lane.
Well, I'm prepared to make a motion. I move to approve the conditional use permit associated with PCN 16026, adopting findings S1 through S6 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the conditions of approval 1 through 8, as listed in the staff report.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. The next item on the agenda is PCN 16017, consideration of and possible action on a request for tentative and final approval of an amendment to the Development Standards Handbook for Pioneer Meadows, a planned development to revise the parking standards in the multifamily designation MF15, MF15A designations, and other matters related thereto on a site approximately 640.53 acres in size in the PD Plan Development Zoning District generally located northeast of the intersection of Vista Boulevard and Wingfield Hills Road, Sparks, Nevada. Senior Planner Ian Crittenden presenting.
Thank you. Quite a mouthful. Trying to get that rid. Okay. So as you stated, this is a request to amend the handbook for Pioneer Meadows. As such, the notice list for this was enormous. And I've gotten a lot of phone calls about it, and I'll talk about it as I go forward. Anytime a handbook is amended, we have to notice everyone that owns property inside that handbook, plus 750 feet around that handbook. So you can see just from looking at this how big that area was. So there were a lot of people noticed. This handbook was originally approved in 2000 and was amended in 2004. And this request for amendment now, it doesn't relate to land use specifically. The land use will stay the same. As was stated in the title of this, the only areas that will be affected are those that have the MF15 and the MF15A land use designation. If you look at the document on the DocuCam, it's these 3 parcels that are highlighted in kind of pink. This parcel on the left is the most recently approved project that we did out there in Pioneer Meadows, which is called Lumina. It's a multifamily project that Planning Commission has approved the conditional use permit for a couple of months back. So the land use inside the subdivision or inside of the plan development is not changing. We're not changing densities. We're not changing anything except the parking requirements that will be required inside of whatever happens on those 3 remaining parcels. So the existing parking requirement in the MF15 and MF15A land use designations is 1.5 spaces per efficiency, 1 bedroom, studio, and 1 parking space per bedroom for 2 bedroom or larger units. The requested amendment would reduce it to 1 space per efficiency, studio, 1 bedroom, and 2 spaces for any 2 bedroom or larger unit. This requested amendment is only amends 1 page of the plan development handbook and is minor in scope, and so we've recommended this come forward as a minor or a tentative and a final approval at the same time as we have done with other kind of line items in handbooks. I'm kind of going through the plan development stuff, then I'm going to go specifically into what the parking, kind of how that breaks down and how this will affect as best as we can know. So the requested amendment to the multifamily parking requirement does not change the project in a significant way. As such, the findings associated with plan developments haven't changed from the original. It still meets all of those findings that were made when this was originally approved. In addition, the final handbook also doesn't deviate, those findings are also able to be made. Specifically, it does not vary from the proposed gross residential density. It does not vary the proposed ratio of residential to non-residential. It does not reduce the common open space. There is no increase in floor area, and there's no increase in total ground area covered by buildings, nor is there substantial change in the height of the buildings. So those are the findings associated with a final handbook approval, and all those findings are easily made for this kind of change. Staff is in support of this amendment to the parking requirements. And so going into what the impact of this is, I want to call your minds to another project just so we can kind of understand what the effect of this kind of a reduction means for projects that may come in. We don't know what the housing mix will be on either of these other 2 parcels. The unit mix is only known on projects that have been submitted, and since those other 2 don't have projects, we can't go into that. But we can look at one of those as an example and some other things that some other projects that I looked at to kind of see how this compares. So the parcel to the west of those three pink parcels, the westernmost one, recently was approved with a project called Lumina. It's a 32 building, 312 unit apartment complex. They have a combination of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units. The breakdown of those is 66 one bedrooms, 198 2 bedrooms, and 48 3 bedrooms, with a total, again, of 312 units. That is kind of the market right now, is my understanding from talking with the people that are bringing in multifamily, is that the market right now is pretty heavy on the 2 bedrooms. And so that's what we're kind of looking at coming forward, and as we look at the requested reduction, you know, that specific demographics not changing. It's still two bedroom units have 2 parking spaces required, and so that's the bulk of that. That project proposed to put in 591 parking spaces. The required per the code was 639. And we, the Planning Commission approved it with the condition that they had to meet whatever was in place when the building permits were applied for. Knowing that this application for amendment was coming, and so they'd have some more time to look into that. So that changed the number of parking spaces by 48 parking spaces, and over a project this size, that's a reduction of 7.5%. So the current parking standard in the code is 1 space per unit. We know that is probably not accurate for the demand in this location, but that is just a minimum. We want people to look at their project and understand what their parking demand is, and so we had a similar project that was recently approved as well, also a Tanamera project, Galleria. I forget that. I think it was ended up being called the Vineyard, the Galleria, but it's behind the Costco over off of Disc Drive.
The new one, they're under construction?
Yeah, they're under construction now.
Okay,
That was also approved. That project had 452 units, and oh shoot, I didn't write down the number of parking spaces they had, but they had a parking ratio of 1.88, so 1.88 parking spaces per unit. The project in Pioneer Meadows that was approved, the Lumina project, was at about 2.04 was what their parking space to unit ratio was. And so I only bring those two up because they're both recent projects, and it gives us an understanding of what the parking ratios were on approved projects, so we can understand, is this reduction getting us into a territory of projects we haven't approved? You know, we haven't approved a project with a parking ratio this low or something. That's not the case for this project. They're still at a little over 2 parking spaces per unit, which is should be healthy. I looked at other cities, I looked at Reno, and I looked at some other cities nationwide that had similar kind of suburban development and similar populations, and we're right in the ballpark. In fact, the parking requirements that are being proposed here are a little higher than most of the other places I looked. And so just to give you guys an idea, that I know there was some concern of whether or not this is adequate parking. The research that staff's done indicates that it should be adequate. The applicant may have more specifics of where their numbers came from and how they determine how many parking spaces they feel like should be provided for these apartment complexes, these multifamily units. That is the extent of my presentation. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there any questions for Mr. Crittenden?
Mr. Chairman, could you give me those numbers again on the 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom?
The existing here and then the proposed? Is that what you're asking for?
Oh, the ones you gave, that was 37, 38. I think it was the Lumina project.
Okay. Okay, so the approved Lumina project here in Pioneer Meadows had 66 one-bedrooms, 198 two-bedrooms, and 48 three-bedrooms.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome.
Are there any additional questions for Mr. Critton? Would the applicant like to come forward?
For the record, Chris Baker with Manhart Consulting here on behalf of the applicant. First off, I'd like to thank staff for working with us on this. I can give a little bit of context of, why we're actually here. As it was discussed, this handbook was approved in 2000. Obviously, a lot of things have happened, good and bad, and then good again since then. To be quite frank, the multifamily project sites in the applicant marketing these, even since the economy is coming back and multifamily is obviously a need, not just in this area, but nationwide. The parking numbers were actually, the requirements per the handbook were a little bit prohibitive for not just local multifamily developers, but for national developers. Their market studies put them usually in the ballpark of 1.5 to 2 spaces per unit. And the trend, like Ian had stated, is now to get more 3-bedroom units. And this parking requirement at 1 per bedroom, if you're putting a family in a 3-bedroom unit, you're not usually having 3 cars. So what that does is drives, obviously, impervious surface up, which drives cost of project up, which replaces, impervious surfaces with areas that could be landscaped, which could be, community amenities or other things which, are frankly cheaper than parking. This amendment was actually proposed at the same time as the previous project that you guys approved recently. And they kind of modified their site plan to add some parking stalls, and what they really did is take out some landscaping to do such. So realistically, what we're doing is comparing not just to, City of Sparks code, which is 1 per unit. We know that's too low for this area. We're trying to hit that target area for the end users. This is what they do. They know how many parking stalls they need. They're, not just local, but national multifamily developers. And if you put that into comparison, I know Mr. Martini had talked about ITE manuals, and those are kind of the guidebook, not just for traffic, but for parking. There's also a parking generation. A project of these sorts, the average kind of parking demand is 1.23. So we're still looking for higher than that, because we don't think that number is appropriate. But what we do want to do is provide a minimum that's not going to prohibit development, knowing that the ultimate end users are going to determine what is adequate for their sites, because this is their business. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for the applicant?
Yes, I have a question, just as a general policy in terms of the way you move forward. Is there a difference in parking expectations on a facility like this, where it is fairly far away from employment opportunities at the moment anyway, and an apartment complex that might be within walking distance or on a bus transit line or something? Would the economics change?
Yeah, actually, ITE categorizes them in 2 different ways. There's an urban setting, and they actually categorize them by mid-rise, low-rise, and high-rise also. And they're broken down by number of units. So when we're talking apples to apples here, we're looking at complexes that are around 300 units, and they're in a suburban setting, and they're called low to mid-rise. So we're looking at 2 to 4 stories, and that's the number that we've arrived at, is the 1.23. Actually, as you can imagine, the number is significantly less if you're in an urban setting. It's actually even lower than 1, I think.
Any further questions for the applicant? This is a public hearing. Want to open a public hearing, and anyone like to come forward? This item is for public comment on the action item. Each comment is limited to no more than 3 minutes for each commentator. Open the public hearing. Close the public hearing. Bring it back to the commissioners for comment. Any comments?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion. I move to forward a recommendation to the City Council for tentative and final approvals of a request for an amendment to the Development Standards Handbook for the Pioneer Meadows Plan Development associated with PCN 16017, adopting findings PDA through PDG and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report. Because this request includes final approval, the Planning Commission does not recommend that the City Council require a bond at this time, as stated in NRS 278A.490.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Before we submit to vote, we want to ask the commissioners if everyone understands the motion. Call for a vote if there are any no discussions. We have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll proceed to general business. A recommendation to the mayor of the planning commissioner to serve the remainder of a term on the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission vacated due to a resignation. The term shall commence immediately following ratification by the city council and will run through June 30th, 2018.
Can I make a motion?
Can you make a motion?
You can?
Yeah. I was asking the chairman.
Yes. Please do.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to nominate Diane Vanderwall.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Congratulations.
Do we need to figure any, do we have alternates set? Is everything set as far as other things we need to do?
I believe there are 2 alternates.
Or can you look at that, can staff look at that for next meeting? Let's make sure.
We'll look at that for you.
Thanks.
Last item, next to last item, public comment. This is for general public comment, limited to the items that do not appear on the agenda and is limited to no more than 3 minutes for each commentator pursuant to NRS 241.020. No action may be taken upon a matter raised under this item until the matter has been specifically included on the agenda. Is there any public comment? There being none, bring it back to the dais for comment from the commissioners. Any final comments?
Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to make a comment. I'd like to say that I've enjoyed working with Commissioner Voles over the last 4 years, and I wish him best of luck. So sorry to miss him.
I want to second that. I've not only been on this Sparks Planning Commission since Doug came on, but I've been working with him and close to him with regional planning also, and it's been a pleasure. He's very knowledgeable when it comes to city planning, and I just, I respect Doug very much, his professionalism, and I wish him the best of luck too.
Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, I would also like to say, done a great job, and too bad, gotta leave. See you, my friend.
Any additional comments from the commissioners?
Thank you.
This meeting is adjourned.
Don't let